How do you think that you right now, with two good arms, if you never broke your arm, would fare against season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter?
If you took me in my prime with non-broken arms
Yeah.
and took me back in time to 2006,
Yeah.
I'd win the show.
Okay.
I'd hands down would win the show. What answer did you expect me to give you?
I don't know, but
Did you think that there would be any answer other than that? This is Justin Lesko, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt and former pro MMA fighter.
And I'm Mike Callahan, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt and law enforcement officer.
Coming up on the show today, we're going to tell you if you can be one of the best Jiu-Jitsu players in the world.
And as the UFC heads back to Fight Island, we're going to take a look at the 2 title fights that are coming up this weekend.
Welcome to That Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I've had a very unpopular opinion that I know is an unpopular opinion that I've been told several times I'm wrong. I still think if you gave me 1 year of dedicated training, I could be the worst player on a Major League Soccer team.
I mean, yeah.
Right?
Oh, so you said that you could,
I've never played soccer a day in my life.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, but you're saying you would make it through the selection process, everything, with one legitimate year of training?
With 1 year of 9 to 5, if it was announced that whatever Major League Soccer team was having an open tryout 1 year from today,
yeah,
with 1 year, I could go to that tryout and make it.
No. There's no way, because there's people that are going to go to that tryout and not make it, and they've been playing soccer their entire life.
True. Do you think an average person who is a jiu-jitsu hobbyist,
Yeah.
do you think an average jiu-jitsu player could become a pro jiu-jitsu athlete if they dedicated their whole life to it and that was all they did? They trained in that same mentality. They could be one of the best in the world. Is that possible?
But they have the underlying. They've trained jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, say they're a purple belt. Mm-hmm. If they're a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and they train twice a day, 6 times a week. They have a strength and conditioning coach. They have a nutritionist. They have all the tools around them. By the time they're a black belt, can they be one of the best in the world?
I mean, it takes, especially nowadays, it takes a lot to do that, and you don't see a lot of people at the pinnacle of the sport who have
day jobs. Do you think it's possible if you had to work a 9 to 5 that you could still find the time to train the way you need to be headlining?
You would have to. You would have to have a serious regimen, and you would have to be extremely rigid and within a very structured schedule to do that. But I mean, you see, a lot of these guys who are at the top of the sport are their job is training.
Yeah. I mean, at some point you have to go from a person who has a job to train to a person who only does.
Yep. There comes a point where you need to make that decision. It's extremely difficult if you are, have a day job and then you're trying to compete with these guys. I guess you look at it Fight to Win will match up these world-renowned guys with local guys who are right, but I mean and they just come in and they fucking steamroll them, you know what I mean? So,
but there has to be a point where the guys who are doing the steamrolling, who are the best in the world, they had to at some point be guys who work jobs.
Unless they were brought up like that. Yeah. Unless they were brought up in the environment like the Gracies.
But you have to break into a cycle at some point. You have to train and be good enough to get to that point, but you have to have the time to be able to train to be good enough to have that point to get to that point. So, I mean, I know like training as a professional fighter, like it was very difficult to balance even like a 15-hour a week job to train twice a week, run every day, do strength and conditioning,
Like,
basically live and be intentionally poor because you're not making any money, just trying to fight.
so
Like I couldn't do it now with a wife and a kid. I couldn't only train jiu-jitsu and try to make that my living, but people do. So
yeah, and the other thing to consider too is that you're not going to find a lot of schedules that are conducive, work schedules that are conducive to the lifestyle and training regimen that's needed. So like you're going to have to, you know, lift or run before work, or then train after work, and then maybe get cardio in after work, and like when you're supposed to be when it would be ideal for you to be recovering between training sessions, you're working. So yeah, it's not
like when I was fighting, like my now wife was my girlfriend, and just to see her I was getting to her house at 10:30 at night,
creeping in there at 10:30 at night.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Nothing good happens after 10:30 at night.
But I can't imagine like
she's like playing. She like has you like act like you're breaking into the. Be the burglar. Oh no! Who's just breaking into my house? Oh, it's just me. The dehydrated, emaciated, fucking homeless-looking man who hasn't had a full meal in my entire 8-week training course. I'm going to get you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to put on a costume to look like the profile of a burglar.
What do you? She's like, what are you doing? Are you here to kidnap me, or are you here for food? Like,
you know what's funny? I knew that Amanda Jean liked me when I would show up at like 10:30 and we would go for a 3 or 4 mile run because I hadn't done my miles yet, and she would go out and run with me. Like, I knew then I had her hooked because she was willing to do cardio at 10:30 at night so I could get the miles in. But
crazy.
I mean, I couldn't imagine like not seeing my daughter for a day so I could train twice a week and run. And
yeah, so I mean, like ideally it's like a lifting or a cardio session in the morning, and then and that's like people call them training sessions, but then you're drilling, you're sparring, and you have maybe 2 or 3 sessions after that. It's a lot. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna have a full-time job and you want to put the time forth to do this, you're going to essentially have 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah. And then try to juggle like a personal life on top of that. Like,
yeah.
Maybe we should try it for a week. We should try to also work our jobs, make the time to see our families, get in 2 training sessions a day, and a run.
I'm okay with it.
Do you think, though, that even if you could do that, if you could live that life, you could have that schedule?
Yeah.
Is there enough training that can be done that can take an average grappler to the top of the sport?
Yes.
Do you think with enough time on the mat you can be...
Gordon Ryan and those guys didn't start winning tournaments until they were brown belts.
Yeah.
There are people out, like, you see articles out there and you see videos of these guys who are winning worlds at, white and blue belt and everything, and like they're labeling them as like prodigies and top prospects, and like it's a guessing game. Like you don't know. Yeah. You don't know how someone's going to mature. You don't know how they're going to do, what their mindset's going to be like when they're bumping up in competition and taking on these monsters.
It's like a pitcher in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't know.
That was a good analogy. I love my analogies. You would have like the BJ Penn, who was naturally the most gifted in the world and didn't train, and eventually like that runs out.
And then he gets heel hooked.
By Ryan Hall.
By backside 50-50 heel hook.
Which, check out the breakdown that I posted on Patreon. It was pretty good, if I say so myself.
If you get the right coaches and you're willing to put the time in, and the time, like we just discussed, is significant. Like, for example, like the Danaher guys, they're there in the mornings, they're sleeping on the mats between classes, they're training in the afternoon, then they're going home and teaching classes like at different gyms. If you're willing to do that and you surround yourself with the right team and the right coaches, it's completely reasonable to think that eventually you can become a world-class
But that also comes with sacrifices. There's only so much money in jiu-jitsu. I would think it would be like, do you remember Johnny Hendricks when he was coming up?
Yeah, it was team takedown.
Yeah, they basically like paid for his room and his board and his training and everything, but once he made it, like he had to forfeit
half of his salary,
half of his winnings.
But he
UFC
also
fights.
they gave him a salary while he was training.
Yeah,
they ended up making out in that.
I mean, it worked out for them, as an investment in the long run. Where by the time Johnny Hendricks was the UFC champ, he was making a ton of money from the UFC, and half it was going right to
He really wasn't, because he was a douchebag and he wasn't
I liked Johnny
marketable.
Hendricks. I liked Johnny
Hendricks. He was just
for a time.
It's terrible. Oh, and there was that thing that he was the welterweight champion, but he just fucking couldn't make weight.
And then he moved up to middleweight, and then also missed weight at middleweight.
Fucking killed. Yeah. He owned like a restaurant, like some type of like steakhouse, and he would just go there and eat. It's like, bro, do you know how? Never mind. But yeah, it was.
But if you could replicate that in jiu-jitsu, where you could have, a camp was going to pay for your room and board and food and training, and you could live that life.
Lloyd Irvin did that.
But what I'm saying is, like, that's the way that
he legitimately did that when he had that jungle house with Keenan and JT, and I'm trying to think who else was in there. Keenan, JT, Nick Schultz, Andres, what's his name? Brunavicus, or
I'm not going to try to pronounce it because only one mispronunciation is
but
good.
James, Vic from The Ultimate Fighter was on there. Mike Perry or Mike Easton.
Yeah,
like all those guys.
Mike Easton?
I don't know.
He kind of flamed out of the UFC.
He fought Dillashaw and he lost.
But that's the way where you need something that makes jiu-jitsu your salary. And again, like we already talked about this, but you need to break into the cycle somehow. You need to be able to afford to train twice a day, and that's the way to do it. But again, I wouldn't give up like living at home with my wife and my daughter to go live in a dorm and train jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 times a week just to.
No, but they were young kids too there.
Yeah.
If you already have an established life, if you have a family, it's pretty unreasonable to think that you're going to stop what you're doing, whatever method of income that you have coming in to support your family, you're going to alter that to go then devote all of your time and energy to train. But it's just not going to happen. Well, like people who are in relationships, and they're already fighting, and then they get together, and then they get married, and they have kids, but the fighting has been a part of their relationship. That's a different story. But for you or I, who are now, we have our careers, we have our families. Like our families rely on us to, as my son will say, Michael G will say, I'm going to work to make the bacon. So our families rely on us to make the bacon. It would be a tremendous leap of faith to then turn around, stop whatever you're doing, and then just devote it to jiu-jitsu, which nobody makes any money. If your name's not Gordon Ryan, you're not making any money.
I mean, eventually this will be our job.
To make the bacon.
We'll just come on the show to make the bacon. So make sure you support us at patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast.
Your $3 a month is really...
$3. I mean, $3 a month for early access to episodes and outtakes. That's a deal. $5 a month for technique breakdowns and behind the scenes.
The shit part about this is that, it's not the shit part, but our jobs are really
in the way
impeding of because we're gonna train tonight and we won't. It's what time is it right now?
8:46.
It's 8:46. So we're gonna be doing this till about probably
9:15.
9:15. Then we're gonna get out there. Then we're not gonna stop training probably till 10:30. And you're not going to get home till 11. I'm not going to make it upstairs from the garage till at least 10:16.
I know, it's going to be rough. So basically, if you're listening to this and you want to be the best jiu-jitsu player in the world, the best thing to do would be 20 years old. 20 is a good 20-ish. Not already have a family. Have a flexible part-time job, have good coaches, train twice a day, 6 times a week.
Train train sport specific twice a day. That's not including your cardio,
lifting,
conditioning, lifting. So 3 times a day, 3 training sessions a day.
It's 253 this weekend.
Right, and they're back on Fight Island.
Back on Fight Island. Do you want to do Dom Reyes versus Jan first? Your pick. You want to do the Reyes?
Blachowicz.
Okay. I think this will be a good fight. I think Dom Reyes can approach this fight as if he's defending, because I know you disagree, but I think he beat John Jones when they fought. Either way, before we get into the fight itself, do you think when the fight is over, people will acknowledge the winner as the true champion at 205? Because John Jones didn't actually lose the belt.
No.
And he kind of gave it up.
And he didn't. Here's the other thing. People just hate John Jones, and they, there's people out there that like just kind of yearn for change. So with that being said, like, if that was just 2 random fighters and you watch that fight, everyone would say that John Jones won that fight. If they objectively watched it. If they were just if Reyes was fighter A and John Jones was fighter B, they would say that fighter B won the fight. However, since he got challenged the way that he did, and everybody, the same thing happened with Gustafsson. If you go back and watch that first Gustafsson fight with no commentary and you're just watching it, Jones won that fight, and like there's really not that strong of an argument otherwise. Like Gustafsson won the first 2 rounds. But same thing here. Like Jones came back and won, but people just, were whatever. I think Reyes wins.
Here's why you're wrong. Reyes won 1, 2, and 3. John Jones won 4 and 5.
Oh, yeah.
Also, Alexander Gustafsson maybe won 3 rounds. I thought he won that fight. Watch.
It's not what happened.
So you're wrong twice.
No. Well, obviously I'm not, because John Jones won both fights.
Allegedly.
No, he did.
Allegedly.
No, he allegedly implies that he may or may not have officially won the fight, and he did, because he was still the champion after both.
I agree Dom Reyes will win this weekend. It'll be interesting whether or not you think that Dom Reyes won the first 3 rounds against John Jones, which
he didn't.
Correctly think that he did.
Well, it's because it's not correctly, because he's not the champion.
I'm not the one who made the mistake. The judges made the mistake.
So 2 out of the 3 judges made a mistake?
Correct.
Cool.
Correct.
Well, we'll have to tune into their podcast to get their thoughts behind it.
Since they don't have a podcast, this is the official.
Right.
He came out strong in the first 3 rounds, then he faded in rounds 4 and 5. So
he came out strong for the first 11 minutes of the fight. John Jones went into fucking beast mode. So I think he's going to win. Although I did watch Jan's fight versus Luke Rockhold today, and he got his head knocked off his shoulders by.
Yeah. And that was his first fight at 205, and
that was his last fight at 205.
That was his last fight at 205 and potentially forever.
No, he's coming back. So he says.
Allegedly.
Anyway, Dominic Reyes is going to win.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close.
I think he's going to grind it out. I think it's going to be a 5-round decision.
I agree. I don't think Jan is a bad fighter. I don't think it's... I think if either of these guys win, they're legitimately the champion at 205, and I don't think 205 is a super deep division right now, but I think that with John Jones not in the mix, these 2 guys are the best 2 guys, so this is the right fight to make to determine who the champion is now.
I like it.
In the Adesanya...
The main event of the evening.
You're getting pretty good.
Thank you.
Izzy versus Costa.
Yeah.
This is you know what I love saying about this fight?
What?
Somebody's O must go, because it's 2 undefeated fighters. And
yeah.
Remember in the WEC, what was the announcer's name? He does UFC events now sometimes when Bruce Buffer doesn't feel like traveling. Doesn't matter. Here's his picture on the screen. He used to say somebody's O must go like more passionately than any other part of the announcing. So he would like peak too early by saying that.
Yeah, then he's
like, somebody's must go.
And
Mike
then
Callahan's
anyway,
fighting against Justin Leskinen, and this is what they weighed. It's two guys who are undefeated. Costa has won. I didn't know this until I was doing some research for the show. 12 of 13 fights by stoppage, and the only person he didn't stop was Yoel Romero, which is pretty ridiculous. 9 stoppages in the first round, 12 of 13 wins are by stoppage, never lost a fight. And he looks like he's carved out of stone.
Yeah, I think Adesanya is going to win.
I agree. It's a smaller cage.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that if you're Costa, you go with the Yoel Romero game plan. Izzy wants to counter strike. You don't engage. You make him sort of lead the dance. Costa needs to get inside the range. He needs to attack the body. Costa throws a lot to the body. The smaller cage might help him accomplish that, but if you start over pursuing Izzy, he's a precise striker who's just going to pick you apart.
Yeah, he's a great counter striker.
But you saw what happened in the Romero fight where Romero wouldn't lead the dance. He couldn't counter strike. He really couldn't get off. So it's tactically it's an interesting matchup. It's not just this hulking monster who's just throwing haymakers and a precision striker. It's like two different styles that can make like it can be an interesting strategic matchup even more than the physical matchup.
Yeah. And I agree. I think Costa needs to come out and stick to a game plan. And if he does, I think he can be successful.
One attribute that will help Costa is Costa has a chin. Romero clipped him a couple times with heavy, heavy shots, and he just kept coming forward. So to accomplish his goal of the way he needs to beat Izzy, that's going to be a pretty big tool to have.
How old is Adesanya?
He's got to be like 27.
He's 31.
Is he really?
Yes. He was a kickboxer before this.
Wow. So official prediction is Adesanya for you as well.
And Reyes.
I'm tempted to pick against Reyes just so we can have some like variety in our picks, but unanimous is unanimous. It is what it is.
There's an article on MMA Junkie that you remember because did you watch the first season of The Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah. But like so long ago, I don't remember.
I remember it pretty well.
You have a good memory with these kind of things.
And they got into a fight over asparagus.
It's in there and fuzzy in my brain.
But you have Fight Pass.
Yeah,
you can watch all these episodes.
I know, but I gotta edit our show.
So they apparently so back at the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, Diego was making his shakes with asparagus, but he was only cutting the heads off and he was leaving the stalks for everybody else. And Stephan Bonner and him had this fucking awkward encounter about asparagus. So anyway, they are apparently boys now, and they've trained together a little bit. And now, in addition to Diego's life coach, the one who
had no martial arts experience whatsoever.
He is going to Stefan's corner and him against I don't know who he's fighting.
Doesn't matter. He's going to lose because he's old and weird.
He's got 3 more fights left.
The cartwheels.
It's the fucking weirdest thing in the world.
He has to be the weirdest dude in the world.
I don't know. Jake
that's maybe a step too far.
Yeah.
He's a fucking weirdo.
Yep.
As of today's recording, there was the first episode of The Embedded was out.
Yeah, I didn't see it yet.
He was basically doing like Tai Chi movements in the airport and was like, oh, this is like my movement stuff because like I have a flight and whatever. And it's like, bro, if you were trying to make someone to be a weird character,
it's him.
You would just model it after.
Yeah, it's
like you couldn't put him in a movie as the weird character because it wouldn't be believable how weird a person is.
How do you think that you right now with 2 good arms, if you never broke your arm, would fare against season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter?
Are you asking if you think Diego Sanchez could?
Well, no, because he fought at 185, and it was the first season. Season 2 was Joe Stevenson, George Gurgel, and all those guys.
Oh. If you took me in my prime with non-broken arms, and took me back in time to 2006, I'd win the show.
Okay.
I'd hands down would win the show. What answer did you expect me to give you? I
don't know. But
did you think that there would be any answer other than that?
Oh, that's really funny.
Do you think?
I think you would do good, but
that was a pity. I think you would do good.
No, I do.
But I think you might win a fight.
I think that it's. I've always said this that whatever sport you're talking about evolves, and my brother-in-law and I got in a debate, argument, whatever. Because I said if you took the Kansas City Chiefs that just won the Super Bowl and you matched them against the Bears in '85. I'm like, these fucking guys would destroy them.
It's not even close.
And he didn't. And then he was like, what about the Cowboys in '94? I'm like, they would fucking kill them. Now, I'm not saying you can use that method of thinking to go, well, the 2020 Super Bowl champs will destroy the 2019. But if you group them by eras or decades, just say decades. It's just it would be. So yeah, to think that somebody, a jiu-jitsu brown belt in their athletic prime, now knowing everything that we know and, having your knowledge and abilities and going back and doing it, it was such it was in the baby stages.
Yeah, I mean, if you
know what I mean?
If you took me, if it wasn't a time travel situation, if you didn't take me from 2015 back to 2006 and it was just me at the same time, I have a different answer. But if you take me back in time with a 10-year head start of knowledge, and I think that on top of just being confident in my own abilities, I think that if you give me 10 years of research and technology and the fact that YouTube exists, do you think Diego Sanchez passes my guard?
In season 1 or now?
Both.
In season 1, no fucking way. If you go back and watch some of those fights, it's the jiu-jitsu in those fights is his jiu-jitsu wasn't even that good, and he fucking destroyed the competition. Now, well, here's the other thing. He didn't get submitted by Marcelo Garcia in ADCC back then.
I'm not saying submitted. I'm saying you passed my guard.
So, I should retract that, because if you go however long in Abu Dhabi against Marcelo Garcia, and you don't get submitted, you're good. But I'm just the techniques that he was using, just looking back on it, I'm like, that fucking worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And his takedowns, he was just diving for takedowns. He was driving people in the fence. There was no situational awareness. People didn't know where the fuck they were. It was crazy.
Yeah. But made the sport what it is today. So. But I would have won the season.
Not the first season at 85. They were too big for you.
Yeah, I couldn't do 85.
Danny Florian fought on season 1.
He's one of the few people, it might be him and Diego, who fought in 4 weight classes.
Fought at 85, 70, 55, and 45. They both did.
Yeah. I would be a good guy if there was a 165 division. 155 was not a terrible cut for me. I made 155 pretty easily.
You could make 145.
I tried and failed horribly to make 145.
It wasn't horribly.
Just passed out and then had to recut a bunch of weight day of weigh-in. It was bad.
Fine.
But
it's fine.
Low points in your life.
Oh, yeah. Way to end the show on a fucking depressing note there.
Well, I'm cutting all that out.
All right. Here we go.
All right, let's go train.
All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to put the links below to our social media and to our YouTube page. That's where you can watch video versions of all of our episodes.
And if you want to support the show, which we really, really appreciate, it helps us put out episodes like this, you can follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast, and I'll link to that below as well. We have a bunch of tiers there, starting as little as $3. You can get early access to episodes, you can get outtakes. Some of the other tiers, you can get technique breakdowns, you can get instructionals, basically a ton of bonus content for a small amount of money, and it really helps us out. Check it out, patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast. Say Diego Sanchez can't pass my guard. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.